Hello everybody, it's Mr. Second Amendment, and you're joining me for my first knife review. It's a long time coming. My passion is firearms. You guys know that. You've seen my videos. Finally, though, I've started to get into the knife world. Past several years, I've kind of had a stoked interest in, starting to get into the knife world, and I feel like I didn't want to rush a review on it because I didn't want to do it unless I felt like I had at least enough info and enough experience with these knives to start to build a foundational experience to talk on. And I feel like I'm at that point now after several knives or years of owning many different types of knives. I think I'm at that point now. So first knife review, I'm busting out with the Emerson CQC-7B, and a huge fan of it. We're going to get into some details of it. In a nutshell, just summary basics, so you don't have to watch the rest of the video if you don't want to. Excellent, solid knife, hard usage, everyday carry knife, excellent durability, good handling, ergonomics, some really cool features I'm going to get into, and solid value depending on where and how you buy it. Alright, that's your nutshell. Let's get into the details. Emerson, it's a company that's out of Southern California. For many years, they've had a personal relationship with the Navy SEALs. Ernie Emerson is the guy who owns the company, and he's worked with the SEALs personally to develop knives as per their request, and that's actually where one of the major features on this knife came from, the wave feature. I'm going to get into that. Okay, but Emerson, maybe if I'm going to throw out names like SOG, or Kershaw, Benchmade, Spyderco, Leatherman. I'm throwing out names like Buck, things like that. You've probably heard of that, but not everybody has probably heard of Emerson, and that's okay because they don't advertise. For the last, I think, more than 10 years now, they don't advertise. And it's not because they're arrogant, but it's honestly just because they don't need to. This knife is just like wildfire through the SF community in the United States military. There's a lot of law enforcement and heavy usage, law-abiding civilians that have a need for serious hard usage knives. Kind of a good reputation, definitely building through that. Honestly, I've been looking into an Emerson for many years now, and then the thing that kind of tipped me over was Nut and Fancy's video when he interviewed Ernie Emerson at SHOT Show, one of the SHOT Shows recently, several years back. Let me see if I can link that video up. Basically, though, that was a heck of a video. It was extended interview with Ernie Emerson, got to answer all of his questions, all that stuff. So moving on, don't want to waste too much time on it, but I takes value not only in the product, but the company behind it. What do they stand for? Who are they? Where's this product made? What values do they have? Why are they in the business that they're in? And that has a huge part of my buying into what I buy. But also a huge part of the equation is, what is the piece of gear? What can it do for me? So we're going to move on. First, I'm going to introduce a term called ID. We're going to ID some gear. We're going to ID some gear, which is going to be the intended deployment of the gear. Okay, so essentially what that's going to mean is, what is this gear intended for? So when I'm doing gear reviews, we're looking at intended deployment. Intended deployment or intended use of this knife in particular is going to be hard usage, everyday carry. Maybe a mechanic has this in his tool bag. Maybe you just have this in your pocket ready to go. Maybe somebody in the military has this in their pocket and they take it out on mission every day. Whatever the case, this is hard usage. 1 minute it's a screwdriver, the next minute it's a cutting instrument, the next minute maybe it's a weapon, whatever. It can handle the abuse. Okay, so moving on from that, I think it's a pretty obvious purpose when you look at it, and we're going to get into the features on it. Moving on to steel quality. The blade is made out of 154 cm stainless steel, and that comes from Crucible Materials. I think they're under a different name now. But I'm a huge fan of 154 cm stainless steel. It's one of my favorite blade materials you can ever get a knife out of. I'm going to bring out this guest appearance real quick. Benchmade Mini Griptilian, also 154 stainless steel. And just looking at it, I mean, this has been around the block a little bit, and this is going to be a future review coming soon. I've actually owned this longer than the Emerson, but 154 cm stainless. Now that's a thinner blade comparatively to the CQC-7. CQC-7 has a 0.125 inch thick blade. This is much thinner, and this has never chipped. I've used this as a mini screwdriver. I've just done so much with this, and it's never had an issue. 154 cm stainless, one of my favorites, and one of the things you'll see if you watch that YouTube video from Nut and Fancy interviewing Ernie Emerson at SHOT Show. Emerson was talking about how, you know, every year or all the time, there's always all these new types of steels coming out. It's the new trendy steel. And everyone all of a sudden starts making blades out of the new trendy steel, and then a new steel is invented, they start making out of that. But he likes the solid classics like 154 cm And there's a history of him with the 154 CM that he talks about. I'm not going to get into detail here on that. Basically, though, I can respect the fact that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And solidly speaking, he's going to be offering the same knives for years to come. Even though the design really hasn't changed, the steel hasn't changed, it's just a solid working design. I can respect that heavily. Moving on, we're talking about sharpness. When it came, it was sharp enough to shave with, and I shave with a straight razor. That's the sharpest steel I own, is my straight razor, and there was virtually no difference between that and my straight razor. Very, very ridiculously sharp. I'm not that good at sharpening knives. I'll just come out and say that. So this knife right now is not in the sharpest it could be. If I gave this to someone who knew what they were doing with sharpening knives with the proper equipment, I'm sure I could get it back to factory. But the time being, though, when I got it, it was just ridiculously wicked sharp. It holds a good edge, too. Now, looking at this blade, you may have noticed when I compared it to that mini Griptilian, look at that. It's sloped in like this, and it's not cut on the right side. Why is that? Okay, that's actually their chisel ground approach, the whole concept, which actually does work. It's not just, it's not just words or advertising, it's reality. I've tried it. The whole idea that Emerson wanted is he wanted a blade that was easier to sharpen out in the field. So if you're out on mission, you're out hiking, camping, whatever you have with this knife, and you need to sharpen it and you don't have professional sharpening stones, you can take a brick or a rock, or you can take something and you can sharpen it in a very crude way and actually bring that knife to usable condition again. That is not, a magic trick. That's not propaganda or advertising. That is reality. I've tried it. Really, really cool that they do that. Emerson was saying sometimes they'll ship out a knife, people get it, they look at that and they think, whoa, they forgot to sharpen one side of my knife. When in the reality is that's how it's supposed to be. Very interesting profile. All right, moving on from that, just one last word on the blade itself. We got Teflon coated, that's black Teflon. It's a very tough, for those of you who know what Teflon is, what it can do for you. Very, very tough finish. It's got no quit in it, I'll tell you that. Also, I elected to go with the, they do it in the Tanto, but I elected to go with the serrated portion. I'm a huge fan of serrated. Some people like the standard straight blades, which are fine. I like serrated because I want to be able to save this part of my blade for the finer cutting jobs, and I want to use this for the rough, nasty stuff. I think that's a good amount of serrated for this style blade. Some would argue maybe that's a little bit too much serrated comparatively to the length of the blade, which is 3.25 inches. I would say is right on par. If I need to cut through wire, or when I was working construction through college, I used to have to cut these rolls of tar when we were doing cement ditches, and I would use the serrated portion on the knife I had back then to cut it, and I would save this for the finer jobs. So huge fan of serrated. I think it's a working knife. It's a combat knife style. If I have to cut through seat belt or something crazy like that, then serrated's up to the task, and it stays sharp too. This mini Griptilian, by the way, I've sent it back twice to get Life Sharp, which is Benchmade's lifetime sharpening policy, and they never sharpen serrated when it comes. They only sharpen the standard side, and they've never had to. This is still, I've used the serrated so much, and it is still wicked sharp. So serrated is one of my favorite options. Personal preference. Moving on, you may have a different opinion, that's okay. Moving on, I like the Tanto because it offers an accelerated cutting surface right here. Okay, if I need to, I can just grip down and I can apply pressure right here on the point. Now the Tanto, this type of blade, the Tanto blade is hundreds of years old. All right, there's nothing new about the Tanto blade. If we want to talk about old technology that just works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I just like it because I've got a point that I can jab into a material with, or I have this, I can do an accelerated cut. All the pressure that I apply is going into this one point. So for strategic cutting, I like it a lot. All right, moving on to speed. Here I'm going to roll in my footage of me just giving you a test run. That is what we got to talk about, is the wave feature. Okay, that is, you've seen other knives. I know Spyderco does some. There's other manufacturers that do the wave feature now. They call it something different. This is Emerson's patented wave feature, and he's the one who designed this. And the whole idea is that it doesn't look like it, or for those of you who don't understand yet, this is what opens up when it comes out of your pocket. Okay, so it's sitting in here, you've seen in my footage, and when I pull it out, the edge of the pocket hits it, and it auto deploys. Just taking the knife out of the pocket deploys it. Now, you can also take it out of your pocket without deploying it, but if you want, you just drag it back. As you pull it out, you've got a solid grip, and the knife just opened. Now, that's weird, because if you actually look at the knife, there's no spring, there's no assist, it's just a standard folder. Okay, there's nothing really special there, but when you put it in a pocket and you take it out of the pocket and it only takes a little bit of practice, you get pretty good with it pretty quick. But that is a awesome option right there. Emerson's got a pretty cool story about how he accidentally designed this, and that's in Nut and Fancy's video as well. Comparatively to this Benchmade Mini Reflex I got here, which is also 154 cm stainless, by the way, that's an auto knife. Okay, this is restricted depending on state and for carriage and everything like that. This is not, and this deploys faster than any knife I own or have ever encountered. So this is an auto knife, and it's still slower because I got to pull it out. I got to hit my safety right here if I have it deployed, and then I have to push the button. Okay, let's compare it to like a Kershaw Leak. All right, this is an assist. Now this is not an auto knife, I just hit that and it rotates up. This has a manual lock, so I pull it out, I open up the manual lock, and then I hit that. All of these options are never going to be as quick as a wave feature coming out of the pocket. I'm sorry, they're just not, and I've tried it. Alright, so moving on from that, huge fan of the wave feature. Originally it was designed, by the way, where the SEALs requested of him that when they're holding it and they take someone bringing a knife in to hit them, that the enemy knife or the incoming knife will get caught on this feature, protecting the operator so the knife doesn't skip up and shear the operator. So that was the original purpose, but as a secondary purpose, the SEALs actually found out that it opens out of the pocket. So there's an interesting story there from Emerson in that video. Okay, moving on from that, we're looking at lockup and overall strength. This is heavy duty. It doesn't want to wobble left or right. It doesn't want to click back and forth, and it's just got your standard. I mean, there's nothing really new age or cutting edge or next level game changer here. That's pretty standard, but it's a really solid lockup, and it doesn't want to move at all. That's really awesome. We do need to talk about this though. When it comes from Emerson from the factory, it is really, really tough. It's really, really tight, and you have to fight it to open it. So this is actually meant to be loosened. You're going to have to loosen that up, I would say. Now it's free floating, but when I first got it from the factory, it was wicked tight. And it does not shift, it doesn't back out, it doesn't turn. When you set it, then you set it. It doesn't loosen up after that. Pretty nice option there. You can pull it out of the pocket, you can do the wave feature, or you can use this rounded knob that's screwed onto the top of the blade. Very durable piece. You can open it like you just saw there, just round it up and open it. Pretty nice feature there. Alright, moving on. Let's look at the handle and the grip. Okay, first of all, the liner on the inside, this is a titanium liner. Okay, so this thing, you run it over with a car or anything like that, it's going to be fine. I would suspect so. I don't think this would ever break. This is a very solid piece. Outside, we got some G10 polymer handles here. G10, for those that don't know, it's very, very grippy. Okay, so I'm pushing right here, and even if you have sweaty or dirty hands, doesn't matter. This is going to give you some grip. So, huge fan of the G10, especially in this application. Seems to make the most sense here. Moving on, let's just keep moving. I got blazed through this. Ergonomics. Okay, Emerson said he knows he's made a good knife when someone holds it and they say, wow, this knife was made for my hands. And in that case, you know, in this case, I have to say so. All right, this just has a good grip. If I'm holding it conventionally, if I'm cutting something here, whittling something, or if I want to do a reverse backhand, I want to use it in this defensive application. I've got big hands, by the way, huge hands. So this knife fits pretty well. If you've got kind of smaller hands, I may lean you towards the Mini CQC-7, which is actually not that smaller. Overall length here, I forgot to mention, 8 inches overall length is what we're dealing with right now. 3.25 inch blade length, 0.125 inch thickness on the blade. That's kind of what we're dealing with. 4.9 ounces of weight. All these things I've already talked about. All right, moving on. I got to keep moving through this. Clip design. Okay, clip design seems pretty good for retention. Doesn't have any issues about opening up and becoming loose anymore. It seems like a pretty solid fit. I've never had any issues with it. The only issue I've had was one of the screws fell out. Non-critical, and I don't know why, for what reason that did that. But at the end of the day, the other screws are holding fine and doesn't seem to be a problem. So, you know, eventually if I ever needed to send it to Emerson, I'm sure they'd fix it. No problem there. By the way, this is lifetime warranty. We're going to get into that with value. But besides that, that is the one issue I've had with this knife, and that's not even a really issue. That's locked on solid. Stays in your pants really good on your pocket there. Okay, moving on from that. We're going to look at durability. I think it speaks for itself. We got the titanium, we got the polymer G10, and we got the 154 cm stainless blade. I have never had any issues or questions about the quality or durability of this blade. I am convinced that this thing is just going to be in it to win it. It's going to last. That comes without saying. Lastly, one of the last points here is value. Okay, what is the value of this blade? Depending where you get it and how much you pay for it, we're looking at $150 to $200. I'm going to put in the link for GP Knives. That's the cheapest I found it, for $152 and plus shipping. But for $150 to $200, I got this one for $208 from Midway USA back a long time ago. And $150 to $200, I think for that price ticket there, for that price range, that price tag, I think you're getting a lot. Okay, you've got the quality steel blade, you've got some unique features that kind of set it aside from the rest. You've got a quality steel blade that's going to hold a good edge for a long time, something you can sharpen in the field. You've also got that lifetime warranty. Of course, it's made in America, so you know, I am one of those weird people that is also a huge part of my buying is, you know, is it made in America? What's the status of that? So that's huge for me. And that's part of it. So an American-made blade for this quality, for the $150 to $200 price range, you know, I would honestly say this is a good value knife. Comparatively speaking, at least in size and value, we can kind of compare it to a Benchmade Griptilian. This happens to be a mini Griptilian. You're going to see a review on that later. But the standard Griptilian is about the same size and weight almost. You've also got your mini reflex I brought out. It's about sort of the same size, definitely lighter though because it's an aluminum body. And Kershaw Leak, you saw that as well. This guy is a little smaller, a little lighter, a little thinner, and you'll expect to see a review on this knife as well. So comparatively speaking, I would say it's a little bit larger, a little bit bulkier than your standard EDC pocket knife or your folder, but I still think that even though that's the case and maybe it has a little weight and bulk to it compared to your standard pocket folder, I still think it's worth the value. Honestly, I carry it every day and haven't had an issue. It's not really a big issue at all for me. So hopefully I've covered everything, just kind of blew through it on the end part there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Please comment for questions.